A sharp command shattered the still air along Highway US 550. Step out of the vehicle, hands on the hood. The New Mexico sun blazed overhead, wind sweeping red dust across the asphalt. Lieutenant Amara Bennett stood beside her steel-blue sedan hair, tousled by the wind, while a white officer gripped his holster, suspicion burning in his eyes. She had done nothing wrong, 63 in a 65 zone, but at that moment, it didn't matter. Amara slowly lowered her window voice, steady. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" The man didn't answer, only slammed his palm on the door. His partner circled the car, mirroring the threat. Cole Whitaker, middle-aged and heavyset, carried himself with arrogance. The younger one, Neil Drummond, looked tense, eager to prove authority. "License and registration," Whitaker barked. Amara nodded calmly. "Registration's in the glove compartment, ID in my wallet. I'm reaching for them now." "Faster," he snapped. She handed him her military ID. The Air Force emblem glinted under the sun. Whitaker sneered. "This isn't a driver's license. You pretending to be military?" Her blood froze. "I'm Lieutenant Amara Bennett, Kirtland Air Base, returning from an award ceremony." Whitaker smirked. "Sure you are. Step out of the car." Arguing would be useless. Amara opened the door, polished shoes touching the hot pavement. In the mirror, her uniform gleamed medals, flashing a reminder of 14 years of service and 2 tours in combat. She had faced artillery fire in Afghanistan, but never fear like this. Whitaker approached, voice dripping contempt. "You're shaking. What's in the car? Drugs, weapons?" "Nothing. I came from a promotion ceremony. Hands on the hood." The shout cracked like gunfire. "I just want to know the reason." Before she could finish, he grabbed her arm, slamming her onto the hood. Her forehead struck metal pane, burning as blood trickled from her temple. "You're resisting an officer," he shouted. "I'm not resisting." She managed her breath tight, but voice calm, eyes full of wounded pride. A few cars slowed. Someone began recording. In that chaos, Amara's fingers moved subtly. Her smartwatch blinked 3 short taps, too long. Sentinel protocol. 9. Activated. She had helped design that classified emergency system to protect service members from abuse. The countdown began 17 minutes. Whitaker tightened his grip. "You think you're special? You're all the same." The insults came crude and ignorant. Drummond hesitated, uneasy, but fear kept him silent. Amara closed her eyes, hearing her father's voice, a veteran's warning. "Keep your dignity. They can take everything, but not your calm." 3 minutes passed. The desert wind grew harsher, sand coiling around her boots. Blood dried on her temple, metal cuffs cut into her wrists. Through her earpiece, a faint tone sounded. The alert had reached the Department of Defense, the FBI, and Kirtland Command. Drummond fidgeted. "Cole, she's bleeding." "Let it be," Whitaker muttered. "County medics will handle it." But then, in the rearview mirror, Drummond saw a black SUV without plates stop behind them. Another followed, then 2 more. Doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, their movements precise, their eyes sharp with authority. Whitaker swore, hand tightening on his weapon. Amara raised her head slightly, a small blood-streaked smile curving her lips. "You've got 14 minutes left," she said, voice hoarse but unshaken. Drummond's throat tightened as realization dawned. The air changed, a quiet hum before a storm of accountability. Amara stood still against the desert sun, her reflection flickering in the polished hood. She knew the system she had built was now moving every signal, racing through satellites and command centers. Justice was already on its way across the burning highway, and this time, nothing could stop it. The first black SUV stopped about 30 feet from the patrol car. Its doors opened, and 3 people stepped out at once. No sirens, no flashing lights, only a heavy silence filled with authority that made the air shift. Whitaker squinted, hand still on his holster, sweat forming on his brow. "Who authorized them to enter my scene?" he barked. The woman leading them was tall Indian American in a gray suit with a small Department of Defense insignia on her collar. Her steps were firm and deliberate. Officers Cole Whitaker and Neil Drummond, she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I am Special Agent Priya Desai, Federal Security Investigations Bureau, Department of Defense. From this moment, this scene is under federal jurisdiction." Whitaker frowned. "This is a routine traffic stop, nothing federal." Priya lifted a folder. "Lieutenant Amara Bennett activated Sentinel Protocol 9, a federal-level emergency. You exceeded your authority the moment you touched her." Silence hung. Drummond glanced at his partner, panic rising. "Cole, she really is military." Whitaker forced a laugh. "I followed procedure. Show me your credentials before you lecture me." But before he could finish, the rumble of engines grew louder. 2 more SUVs rolled in formation, followed by a low military helicopter whipping red dust into the air. Men in black suits fanned out, forming a perimeter with perfect precision. Amara stood beside her car wrists, cuffed, blood dried at her temple. She watched without fear, calm and certain, just as she'd planned. "Remove the cuffs," Priya ordered. A medic hurried over, collecting blood samples from the car. "Minor head wound, possible concussion," he muttered. In Priya's earpiece, a voice reported, "Step 3 confirmed. Civilian dashcam data, secured radio feeds, and GPS logs copied." Every move was executed with silent efficiency. Whitaker stumbled back. "You're overstepping." "No, officer." Priya replied coldly. "This is consequence, miles away." Brigadier General Ethan Monroe of Kirtland Air Base was on the phone with Police Chief Harold McKinney. His voice was steady, his words sharp. "One of your officers assaulted an Air Force lieutenant in uniform. All evidence has been transferred to the Department of Justice." McKinney's face went pale. Before he could answer, an aide rushed in. "Chief, local media's on scene. At least 5 videos are online already." Back on the highway, the confrontation played out like a silent film. Drivers stopped filming. A teenager shouted, "She really is in the military." The murmurs spread fast. Drummond whispered, "Cole, we need to stop." Quiet. Whitaker snapped, but when the 5th SUV arrived, he knew control was gone. Priya approached Amara and gently removed the cuffs. "Lieutenant Bennett, please stay still for the medical team." Amara nodded. "I'm fine." She turned to the officer's, eyes unwavering. "I once believed those who serve justice could tell right from wrong. Today I learned not everyone in uniform understands its worth." Priya motioned for forensics. Evidence was sealed: handcuffs, a chip of paint stained with blood, and the patrol car's data recorder. "Step 12, complete," a voice boomed from the helicopter. "Awaiting command authorization." Whitaker cursed and grabbed his radio. "This is Sandoval PD, requesting backup." Only static answered. The channel had been locked. The desert fell silent again. Even Drummond said nothing. Amara checked her watch, 3 minutes remaining. She knew a call from the Pentagon would soon reach the police chief's office, ending every excuse. The wind picked up swirling dust around the black SUVs. Sunlight glinted off the agents' silver badges, sharp as judgment. Amara stood tall, blood streaking her face, but her gaze unbroken. In that moment, everyone realized the woman they had humiliated wasn't just a civilian, she was the embodiment of the justice they had sworn to uphold. From the distance came the thundering blades of the helicopter descending. 17 minutes had passed. Justice had arrived exactly on time. Police Chief Harold McKinney slammed the file onto the table papers, scattering across the suffocating room. "What the hell is happening out there?" he barked. The fluorescent lights flickered, the faint thrum of helicopters echoed like an omen. His team sat silent, eyes fixed on the table, afraid to speak. On the big screen, cell phone footage played on repeat. Whitaker pinning a female Air Force officer against the hood, blood streaking down her face, then black SUVs storming in. The Department of Defense emblem gleamed on the uniforms. A caption blinked in the corner, viral in 5 minutes. "Over 200,000 views in less than 10. McKinney's voice shook with fury. "Who authorized them without telling me?" Who no one answered. Finally, the communications chief spoke softly. "Sir, Sentinel Protocol. 9 overrides all local authority. When a service member is assaulted, Kirtland Air Base and the Department of Defense have full jurisdiction. Override my authority." McKinney slammed his palm down. "The entire country just saw 2 of my officers arrest a decorated war hero. Do you understand what that means?" A young officer cleared his throat. "Second video's trending on Twitter, sir, with GPS tags. They're calling it evidence of police brutality and racial profiling. The media's demanding a response." McKinney leaned back, exhausted. He had believed control was absolute, that silence could solve anything. But this storm couldn't be contained. The phone rang. Brigadier General Ethan Monroe's voice was low and firm. "Harold, she's one of my officers. Every second of what happened was recorded satellite civilian footage, police radio. You'll answer directly to the Department of Justice." McKinney swallowed hard. "Ethan, let me explain. No, Harold. I respected you once, but now you'll face the system you allowed to rot." The line went dead. In the corner, Union Representative Darrell Kincaid wiped his forehead. "We should issue a statement, say the officers followed protocol, that they thought she was impersonating." McKinney glared at him. "You want to defend beating a uniformed lieutenant with medals on her chest? That's your idea of damage control. If we don't protect them, morale will collapse," Kincaid muttered. The door burst open. Lieutenant Lena Cruz entered, clutching printouts. "Chief, I checked the last 3 years of stop data for Whitaker and Drummond. There's a problem. Their stop rate for black drivers is 4 times higher than average, and the time stamps on their reports were altered. Someone's been editing the records." The room went still. McKinney knew immediately what it meant. This wasn't isolated misconduct. It was systemic bias, traceable and provable. He sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. "God help us, we're finished." The phone rang again. Mayor Inez Calderon's voice cut like ice. "Harold, get out there now. The press is surrounding City Hall. Calm the public and deliver a full report by sundown." "I'll handle it," McKinney replied, though he already knew he couldn't. On the screen, the video's view count exploded. Comments flooded in. "Justice for Amara Bennett. End racial profiling. Police accountability. Now." Each phrase hit like a hammer, breaking the illusion of control. McKinney rose and walked to the window. Sunset bathed Albuquerque in red and gold. Far away, he saw dust clouds, the military convoy pulling back. But he knew the real battle was just beginning. Outside, a breaking news alert blared from a nearby radio. "The wrongful arrest of Air Force Lieutenant Amara Bennett has gone national. The Department of Justice confirms a federal investigation into Sandoval County Police misconduct. Federal agents are now on site. In the dim light, McKinney felt everything he had built, authority, order, the faith in his badge, begin to crumble. He turned to the framed motto on the wall, to protect and serve. For the first time in his career, he understood the bitter truth: not everyone in uniform served justice, and somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it meant to protect. The next morning, Albuquerque woke to a storm of outrage. On cafe screens, office phones, and national news broadcasts, the same image replayed endlessly. Lieutenant Amara Bennett, handcuffed, her head forced onto the hood of a car, blood streaking down her temple. The headline read, "Wrongful Arrest Shocks Nation Department of Justice. Launches Federal Investigation." At the local FBI office, Special Agent Lucia Ortega entered the briefing room holding a thick folder. "We've been assigned to lead the civil rights investigation under Title 18, she announced. On the screen behind her, a map of Sandoval County appeared covered in red dots. Red marks represent stops involving drivers of color. Blue marks are white drivers. The disparity is too large to be coincidence. A data analyst added, Black and Latino drivers were stopped 5 times more often than average, and we found altered timestamps to conceal excessive stop times. Lucia crossed her arms, eyes sharp. This isn't random. It's a pattern. And if proven, it's systemic civil rights abuse. She switched slides showing internal emails from the Sandoval Police Department marked high-value zones. When an agent asked what that meant, Lucia replied, "It's code for minority neighborhoods targeted to boost arrest numbers." Her phone buzzed a secure message with one line, "Find Shield Ledger," in off-site storage. The truth is there. Someone from inside was leaking information. That afternoon, in a small cafe near the university, journalist Sophia Rangel met Amara's younger brother, Eli Bennett. Tired from his hospital shift, he said softly, "I'm not a spokesman, but I can't stay silent. My sister told me, if you're silent in the face of injustice, you're part of it." Sophia recorded every word, eyes burning with empathy and anger. Before leaving, Eli handed her a USB drive. "My sister made this backup. It's the Sentinel Protocol 9 report she helped design. It documents years of discrimination against Black service members." Sophia closed her hand around it. If this is real, it could change everything. Meanwhile, Police Chief Harold McKinney faced a closed door, meeting with Mayor Calderon, who didn't hide her fury. "Do you understand the fallout, Harold? Public trust is gone. I've had over 300 calls this morning. Citizens are demanding an independent oversight committee." McKinney tried to stay calm. "I'll cooperate with the feds." "I don't want cooperation," she snapped. "I want results." After she left, McKinney stared at the newspaper on his desk, Amara in her blood-stained uniform standing tall beneath the headline, "Dignity Unbroken, the New Face of Justice." He gave a bitter laugh. The story was no longer about policy or procedure. It had become a symbol, and symbols couldn't be silenced. That night, Lucia received new satellite data. AI reconstruction restored every heat trace and sound from the scene. Every shout, every insult, every motion was clear as day. "They can't deny it now," an agent whispered. Lucia replied, "We're not here for their denial. We're here for the truth." At that same moment, Sophia published her article, "The Map of Injustice, When the Law Turns Its Back." The story spread like wildfire. Thousands of comments, tens of thousands of shares. People who had once stayed silent began speaking out about their own wrongful stops. The hashtag Justice for Amara turned into Walk Reform Now. In a small apartment on the south side, Amara sat quietly by the window, a white bandage on her temple glowing under the city lights. Outside, sirens wailed faintly. She touched her smartwatch, now inactive, and saw a message from Lucia Sentinel Protocol 9 worked perfectly. They will have to answer. Amara smiled faintly, not from victory, but peace. The storm of justice had begun, and this time it wouldn't stop with her. On Saturday morning, the city of Albuquerque moved like a living tide. Along Central Avenue, groups of veteran students and everyday citizens marched beneath banners reading Justice for Amara and Protect Our Protectors. Under the blazing desert sun, the rhythm of drums and chants blended with the echo of the national anthem. No one had officially organized the march, yet everyone moved for one name, Amara Bennett, the woman in uniform who had made America look at itself again. From a hotel balcony downtown, journalist Sophia Rangel reported live for a national network. We're witnessing one of the largest peaceful demonstrations New Mexico has seen in a decade, she said, her voice steady as the camera panned over the crowd. People are demanding police reform, justice for Lieutenant Bennett, and transparency about racially biased traffic stops. She lowered her tone, her gaze softening at the sight of hand-painted signs that read, "Police accountability and civil rights are not optional." Meanwhile, at Kirtland Air Base, Amara sat quietly in a small recovery room, watching the live footage of thousands marching under the blistering sun. Her hands trembled as she saw young faces holding posters with her image. This was not what she had wanted. She had only asked to be heard, to be respected. But now her story had transcended the personal and ignited something far greater. Brigadier General Ethan Monroe entered holding a folder. "They're asking you to speak Amara, not as a victim, but as an officer." She met his eyes, her voice firm. "If I speak, it won't be about me. It'll be about the system." Monroe nodded. "That's exactly why they need you." That afternoon, in the base's main hall, rows of cameras and reporters waited. Amara stepped to the podium in her freshly pressed uniform, the scar on her temple faint but visible. She carried no anger, only calm strength. Her voice rang clear through the microphone, commanding the room. "I don't want anyone to endure what I did. I believe in the officers who serve with honor, but true justice only exists when we face our failures. Accountability is not humiliation, it's the first step toward trust." The hall fell silent. Some reporters turned away to wipe their eyes. A veteran rose and saluted. One by one, the crowd followed, hundreds standing with hands to their brows. No one spoke, but the silence was full of reverence. At the Sandoval Police Headquarters, Chief McKinney watched the broadcast, eyes heavy. "She was beaten by my officers, and she still speaks of faith," he murmured, "while I've lost mine." Union Representative Darrell Kincaid broke the silence. "Sir, we need to protect the department's image," McKinney interrupted quietly. "No, Darrell. Image can't be protected by silence." That night, hundreds of videos from the protest flooded social media. One clip stood above the rest, Amara on stage, the sunset glowing across her uniform, the desert wind lifting the flag behind her. Her voice carried through the clip, "Justice is not punishment. Justice is repair." The video reached over 2 million views in 12 hours and was given a simple name, "The Calm Before Reform." Yet beneath the wave of emotion, unseen forces were moving. In Sophia's inbox, an anonymous email appeared with a single subject line, "Find Shield Ledger." The truth goes deeper than you think. Attached were only a few encrypted characters and GPS coordinates near Santa Fe. She immediately called Special Agent Lucia Ortega. At the FBI office, Lucia studied overlapping data streams on the massive screen. A heat map glowed with clusters marking the hot zones. She nodded slowly. If the Shield ledger is real, we're not just investigating misconduct. We're uncovering a system engineered for discrimination. Later that night, Amara returned to her quarters after the speech. She sat by the window gazing at the city lights shimmering like stars on the horizon. In the reflection, her eyes looked tired but resolute. She knew what she had awakened was larger than anger. It was hope. A spark of justice had been lit, and it would not fade easily. A week after Amara Bennett's speech, support for her still swept across the nation. But in the shadows, a quiet counterattack was forming among those determined to silence the call for reform. On the conservative network Patriot Watch, a silver-haired host opened his evening broadcast with a mocking grin. Is Lieutenant Bennett truly a hero, or just a pawn in a political game, he asked. The screen filled with edited photos of Amara in Afghanistan, darkened and captioned "Under Investigation for Misconduct." It was a distortion of a small internal inquiry from years ago, now weaponized to discredit her. At Kirtland Air Base, Amara watched the segment in silence. "It's begun," she whispered. Brigadier General Monroe frowned. "They'll try to destroy your reputation before the truth reaches the public, but we'll fight back." Meanwhile, in a dim bar outside the city, two men sat in a corner booth. One was Whitaker, unshaven and bitter. The other, Darrell Kincaid. The police union representative poured whiskey and spoke softly. "The feds are digging too deep. If we don't control the story, we're finished. The media turned her into a saint. We need something that makes people doubt her." Whitaker smirked. "She wants justice? I'll show her what that feels like." The next morning, an anonymous email landed in reporters' inboxes, claiming to prove that Amara had clashed with a superior officer overseas. They didn't know that the case had been cleared years ago, and that officer later faced human rights charges. By noon, headlines exploded: Lieutenant Bennett hero or rebel. At the FBI office, Special Agent Lucia Ortega slammed a newspaper onto the table. "A smear campaign," she said. "They're trying to turn her into the villain and protect the system." Another agent added body cam footage, part of it's missing from the police files. Lucia laughed dryly. "Lost at the perfect time. How predictable." Across town, journalist Sophia Rangel took a panicked call from the student who filmed the first viral video. "A patrol car's been outside my house for 3 nights, he said. They call it routine, but they're watching me." Sophia's voice hardened. "Don't open the door without a warrant. I'll send a lawyer." Meanwhile, at the military hospital, Amara received a visit from a city attorney. "Lieutenant Bennett," he began smoothly, "the city wants peace. A public apology, light discipline for their officers, and a personal settlement of $2 million. In return, you sign a confidentiality agreement and end all involvement." Amara looked at him coldly. "How much is justice worth $2 million? He faltered. "No, I just want you to have peace." She smiled faintly. "Peace can't be bought with silence. I refuse." After he left, Monroe entered. "You know they'll dig up your past," he warned. "They'll lie, threaten, twist everything." Amara replied firmly. "I've faced bullets, General. What I fear isn't violence, it's the truth being buried." That evening, Lucia met Sophia in an underground parking garage. "The body cam data's gone," Sophia said, pulling out a small hard drive. but I found a temporary cloud backup 18 seconds before overwrite. It shows Whitaker hitting her before she spoke. Lucia's eyes lit up. Enough to shatter their lies. At the same time, in a rundown Santa Fe apartment, Whitaker yelled into his phone. "Don't call me again, I didn't sign anything." He slammed it down, unaware that a black car outside was recording every word. As night fell over, the desert-hot winds swept through the city. On social media, two storms collided, one defending Amara, one tearing her down. Amid the noise, her voice resurfaced from an old interview. If the system fears the light, maybe the first thing we should do is turn it on. And somewhere in that darkness, a small light began to shine, a light no amount of shadow could ever extinguish. The night wind swept across the desert outside Santa Fe, carrying red dust around an abandoned warehouse. Special Agent Lucia Ortega parked her SUV and killed the headlights. The glow from her laptop lit her tense face. Coordinates confirmed, she whispered into her radio. If that email was right, Shield Ledger is here. Team 2 in position ready to breach, came the reply. The heavy metal door groaned open hinges, screaming like a warning. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Flashlights cut through the dark, revealing rows of covered servers. Lucia pulled back a tarp, her breath catching. Property of Sandoval PD Auxiliary Storage Unit. She exhaled. It's real. A technician connected a cable, and the screens came alive. Files flashed open, traffic stop logs, radio recordings, arrest statistics officer reward lists. Lucia murmured, "This isn't just evidence. It's the map of corruption itself." An old email appeared. "Keep a copy to protect us, mutual insurance." Signed, Cole Whitaker. Lucia's eyes hardened. That's how they kept each other silent. Blackmail in exchange for loyalty. As her team backed up the data, her phone vibrated. It was an internal FBI call. Ortega, she answered. Sophia Rangel's urgent voice filled her ear. "Lucia. Officer Drummond just called. He says he has proof about the Shield Ledger system. He wants to meet." Lucia hesitated. "Stay with him. I'm coming." An hour later, in a small roadside diner, Sophia sat across from Neil Drummond. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "I can't live with it anymore," he said quietly. "Whitaker made us log every stop, alter timestamp, so if one of us got caught, we'd all go down. He called it insurance. The brass knew they wanted it that way." Sophia hit record. "Do you have evidence?" Drummond nodded and slid a small USB across the table. "I copied files before they locked the servers. The Shield Ledger holds everything. Illegal. Stops. Erased. Complaints. Names of commanders who approved it." "Why give this to me?" she asked. He gave a tired smile. "Because I once believed in the badge. Now I just want to believe in myself again." Lucia entered, quietly scanning the room before joining them. Drummond tensed, but didn't move. "I'll cooperate," he said, "if my family's safe." Lucia nodded. "You'll get federal witness protection, but you must tell us everything." As he spoke, Sophia scribbled notes. He explained the reward system. Every arrest in a high-value zone earned points toward promotion. "White drivers weren't worth stopping," he said bitterly. "They said it didn't pay off." I looked away, but when I saw Bennett, I knew I'd helped build this. Lucia asked who ordered the ledger. Drummond hesitated. "Not Whitaker. The command came from Chief McKinney. He used it to control his officers, mentioned the ledger, and everyone stayed quiet. Outside, an engine revved. Lucia's eyes darted toward the window. "Were you followed?" Drummond shook his head, but before he could answer, the door burst open. A man in plain clothes stepped in, scanning the room. Lucia motioned for Sophia to leave, then stepped between them. "He's under federal protection," she warned. "Every move you make is recorded." The man froze, turned, and disappeared. Later, Lucia escorted Drummond to a federal safe house. He stared out the window, voice low. "They taught us justice was light. No one said we'd become its shadow." Back at the field office, the data from Santa Fe finished copying dozens of terabytes, names, numbers, every hidden crime. Lucia connected through a secure line to Amara Bennett. "We found it," she said. "The entire system. You weren't just attacked, you exposed their blind spot." Silence hung for a moment. "How many people like me?" Amara asked quietly. "Over 700 cases," Lucia replied, "nearly half military or veterans." Amara took a deep breath. "Then this isn't my story anymore." Lucia's voice was steady. "No, it's America's." The next morning, Albuquerque felt as if it were holding its breath. At FBI headquarters, Special Agent Lucia Ortega presented before an interagency task force that included the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and military police. On the large screen behind her, charts showed hundreds of traffic stops, thousands of recordings, emails, and shift logs, all from the secret database called Shield Ledger. Lucia's voice was calm, but sharp. "This data proves racial profiling in Sandoval County wasn't isolated, it was systemic. They called it high performance. I call it a crime." The room went silent. A Justice Department official finally said, "If that's true, we can launch a full pattern or practice investigation." Lucia nodded and changed slides. And here's the core of it. Police Chief Harold McKinney approved performance bonuses for high-value zones, which targeted minority neighborhoods. Here's an email he sent to Whitaker 3 months ago. "Don't let lazy officers ruin the stats. We need good numbers to keep funding." A low murmur spread. Someone whispered, "He just signed his own indictment." At City Hall, Mayor Inez Calderon received the report. She rose from her chair. "We'll sign a consent decree. From now on, every action of the Sandoval Police Department falls under federal supervision." News spread instantly. Headlines blazed: FBI exposes systemic racism in Sandoval Police public oversight imposed, justice served. That afternoon, Lucia led a convoy to Sandoval Police headquarters. Reporters filled the entrance. Cameras flashed as she stepped out. McKinney waited on the steps, pale and trembling. "You have no authority," he began. But Lucia raised the official order. "By directive of the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense, you are suspended pending investigation for abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations." Behind her, technicians entered sealing computers and files. Each step echoed like a verdict. Whitaker was led out in handcuffs beside Drummond, now a protected witness. Cameras erupted with flashes. Drummond kept his head down, but Whitaker shouted, "You're all corrupt." "She set me up." Lucia met his eyes. "No one set you up. You buried yourself." At Kirtland Air Base, Lieutenant Amara Bennett stood by her office window as the sunlight faded. Brigadier General Monroe entered holding a newspaper. "You see, Amara, what you started has become a national movement. The Department of Justice is drafting a reform act, de-escalation and bias accountability, and they want you on the advisory board." Amara smiled faintly. "I don't want to be a symbol. I just want a system that stops hurting people like me." Monroe replied softly, "You don't have to be a symbol. Just stay true to who you are. History will take care of the rest." That evening, Lucia met journalist Sophia Rangel at a quiet cafe. On the TV, the Shield Ledger recordings played nationwide. A reporter's voice cut through the hum. The tapes reveal officers discussing quotas for stopping black drivers to secure funding. Public outrage is surging with calls for criminal charges. Sophia looked at Lucia. "We did it." Lucia shook her head. "Not yet. They'll try to negotiate, blame individuals, say the system didn't know. But this time, we have proof, and the public has hope." Across town, Mayor Calderon signed an executive order establishing a civilian oversight committee. The text read, "Full-time body cam, use required. Data must be retained for at least 3 years. All citizen complaints will be reviewed publicly." That night, the announcement echoed through the city. Under the desert sky, thousands gathered with candles and signs reading "No More Silence." Veterans, nurses, students, and citizens who once feared flashing lights now sang together about justice and faith reborn. In her small apartment on the south side, Amara watched the footage quietly. She touched the faint scar on her temple as candlelight reflected in her eyes, small but steady. "I turned on the light," she whispered. "Now everyone can see." Outside, the desert night lay calm, but across the city that once stayed silent, the light of justice burned bright, unshakable, and impossible to extinguish. On a cool Monday morning in Albuquerque, the air was calm after weeks of media storms. Inside the main hall of the University of New Mexico, hundreds of police officers, soldiers, and security students gathered for the launch of a new initiative, the Guardian Bridge. Its founder, Lieutenant Amara Bennett, stepped onto the stage in her dark blue uniform. Her stance was straight, her expression no longer wounded, but resolute. Cameras followed as she spoke clearly into the microphone. The Guardian Bridge is not a political campaign. It is a bridge between law enforcement and those who serve the nation, between police and soldiers, between authority and trust. Power without responsibility becomes violence, and responsibility without trust becomes collapse. We must rebuild both. The audience erupted in applause. In the front row, Brigadier General Ethan Monroe smiled while Agent Lucia Ortega nodded. They knew Amara's program was more than training. It was the beginning of real change. Afterward, journalist Sophia Rangel approached her. "You just turned reform into inspiration," she said. Amara replied calmly. "Reform only matters when it reaches people's hearts. If it stays on paper, it dies." That afternoon, the Civilian Oversight Committee held its first press conference at City Hall. Mayor Calderon unveiled the Reform Roadmap, a 12-point plan inspired by Guardian Bridge, emphasizing de-escalation training, community monitoring, and mental health support for officers. Behind her screens displayed the words community trust, accountability, and systemic reform. In a detention cell, former Chief McKinney watched the broadcast on a small TV. His eyes dimmed as Amara's speech played. "I thought I was protecting order," he murmured, "but I was only protecting fear." Meanwhile, Neil Drummond, now under witness protection, attended the Guardian Bridge launch in secret. From the back row, he listened as Amara announced a new program phase. "We will train even those who once made mistakes, not to forgive them, but to show that change is possible." Her words made him bow his head. After the event, he texted Sophia 4 words, "I'm ready to help." That night, Amara returned to her small apartment and opened her laptop. Reports showed a 12% drop in police complaints. and nearly 30% growth in public trust within 4 weeks. She whispered, "We're changing, but it's just the start." A message appeared from Lucia. The Department of Defense wants to expand Guardian Bridge nationwide. You're being appointed director of the new civil-military program. Amara froze, emotion filling her chest. She remembered the day she was forced against a car hood, blood dripping down her face. Once a victim, she was now rebuilding the system that had broken her. It wasn't pride, it was purpose. The next morning, she visited the first Guardian Bridge training center where officers and soldiers practiced empathy response exercises. A young officer asked, "Lieutenant Bennett, do you really believe one program can change the system?" Amara met his eyes. "No, I believe in people. But for people to change, someone has to begin." After the session, sunlight fell across the courtyard. A group of young officers approached her. "We want to bring this to schools," one said. "Talk to students about our work." Amara smiled. "Then Guardian Bridge is already doing its job, a bridge between us and them." That evening, Sophia published her article in The Observer from a watch on her wrist to a bridge between worlds. It ended with the line, "Some battles need no weapons, only courage not to step back." Amara closed her laptop and looked out the window. The desert sunset glowed deep red. She imagined a future where traffic stops no longer carried fear, where trust could exist between those in blue and those they served. The fire inside her had changed, no longer anger, but light. The same light she once ignited in pain now guided others forward across the bridge she built, the Guardian Bridge. Late in the afternoon, the last sunlight spilled through the windows of the Guardian Bridge Training Center. On the table lay stacks of letters and printed emails, apologies and reflections from officers who had once stood on the wrong side of justice. Amara flipped through them slowly, her expression calm but heavy. One letter made her pause. The handwriting was shaky. "My name is Neil Drummond. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only ask for a chance to make things right." Attached was an old photo of Drummond in uniform, head bowed before a memorial to fallen officers. Amara sighed. Her anger had long faded, replaced by compassion and purpose. She knew forgiveness couldn't change the past, but it could shape what came next. 2 days later, Drummond arrived at Guardian Bridge under the Redemption Workshop, a training program for officers who had broken ethical codes but wanted to rebuild. As he entered, all eyes turned to him not with hatred, but with quiet curiosity. Amara met him at the entrance. "You came," she said evenly. He nodded, eyes down. "I didn't think you'd meet me." "I'm not here to forgive," she replied. "I'm here to hear what you'll do with the rest of your life." His voice trembled. "I once thought Whitaker was the perfect officer. He told us to protect the law at any cost. I didn't realize the cost was my soul." Amara held his gaze. "If you're truly sorry, help us teach others. Show them how power can destroy when it loses compassion." That night, Drummond stood before a classroom of young cadets. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "The day I handcuffed Lieutenant Bennett, I thought I was doing my duty. Now I know duty means nothing if it strips away someone's dignity." A young woman raised her hand. "Aren't you afraid people will judge you?" Drummond smiled faintly. "Yes, but I'm more afraid of staying silent." From the back of the room, Amara listened. When the session ended, she walked up to him and said softly, "That's the first honest thing you've said. Don't lose it." At the same time, in a federal holding cell in Santa Fe, former police chief Harold McKinney received a rare visitor. Amara entered carrying a folder. He looked up startled. "You came for revenge." No, she said, I came to understand. Through the glass, McKinney looked aged and hollow. You don't understand, Lieutenant. I live my life in fear. Fear of losing control, funding, respect. I thought I was protecting order, but I was just protecting corruption. Amara opened the folder, showing him photos of citizens holding hands with police at memorials of the first Guardian Bridge trainees. You see, there are still people who believe in what's right. It's not too late. McKinney stared for a long moment, then whispered, If I could go back, I'd stop Whitaker when he first mentioned quotas. But I stayed silent. And silence is the worst crime. Amara stood. I didn't come to make you feel guilty. I came to tell you you can still do the right thing. Tell the truth, not for me, but for yourself. Days later, the news broke. McKinney had agreed to cooperate with federal investigators, exposing the officials who helped cover up misconduct. The revelation shocked the nation, but also brought hope proof that truth was finally winning. That night, Amara found an unmarked envelope on her desk. Inside was a letter written in soft handwriting, I am Neil Drummond's wife. Thank you for not destroying him. Because of you, he found the courage to face himself. Amara folded the letter gently and stepped onto the balcony. Moonlight spilled over the silent desert. Somewhere out there, those who had lost their way were learning to rise again. And she once called a victim had become a guide. The wind carried the scent of warm earth. Amara closed her eyes, feeling it brush through her hair. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time she felt peace. True change, she thought, doesn't come from verdicts. It begins the moment someone faces their conscience. She opened her eyes, looking toward the glittering city lights across the desert. That she whispered, is justice when those who once fell learn to begin again. The June wind swept through Albuquerque, carrying dry heat and the scent of desert dust. A year had passed since the smartwatch on Lieutenant Amara Bennett's wrist had activated Sentinel Protocol 9, and since then the city had changed forever. Inside City Hall, Mayor Inez Calderon signed a thick report, the one-year review of Sandoval police reform. The first page made her smile, faintly complaints down 40% use of force cases, cut in half, and public trust at its highest in 10 years. We did it, her aide whispered. Calderon shook her head. No, they did. She nodded toward a screen showing the Guardian Bridge program, a joint training between police and military. On stage, Amara spoke firmly. No system improves on its own. Only people within it can choose to do better. In the front row, Agent Lucia Ortega took notes beside Neil Drummond, no longer a witness but a training advisor. When Amara said the word responsibility, he nodded quietly, understanding the cost of his past silence. After the ceremony, Amara stepped outside, the wind lifting her hair and uniform. Lucia caught up, handing her a folder. The Justice Department just confirmed 17 more cities will adopt Guardian Bridge as a national model. Amara smiled. Good. As long as justice never falls asleep. Across the courtyard, her brother Eli Bennett trained young medics on emergency response for officers. Seeing her, he grinned. Didn't think you'd show. You know me, she said. Couldn't miss it when your work ties into Guardian Bridge. He tilted his head. Do you ever think all this started because of one watch and 17 minutes? Amara looked toward the horizon. No. It started because someone refused to stay silent. Meanwhile, in a federal prison in Pennsylvania, former officer Cole Whitaker sat in a rehabilitation class. A documentary on Guardian Bridge played across the screen. When Amara's image appeared, he looked away, but the instructor said, "The woman you once attacked now teaches a nation about trust." Whitaker clenched his fists. After a moment, he muttered, "Maybe it's time I start over." At Kirtland Air Base, Brigadier General Ethan Monroe paused his report to the Department of Defense, glancing out the window. Outside, recruits practiced de-escalation drills, drawing mock weapons, then lowering them in unison. Monroe smiled. Finally, they're learning how to win without firing. That afternoon, Amara stood before a sea of cameras at a federal press conference. She took a breath. "A year ago, I was handcuffed for something I didn't do. Today, I'm here not to relive that moment, but to speak of what we built together. We turned a wound into a path, fear into dialogue, and a system into humanity. But reform is not an end. It's a journey. If we ever stop questioning ourselves, everything we've done loses meaning." Applause filled the room. From the back, Lucia whispered to Monroe, "She's no longer a witness. She's the revolution itself." Monroe nodded silently. That night, Amara sat in her Guardian Bridge office reviewing reports when journalist Sophia Rangel entered with a printed article. "It runs tomorrow," she said. The headline read, "1 year after the traffic stop that changed everything when justice learned to stand again." "This isn't just about you," Sophia added. "It's about everyone who chose not to turn away." Amara smiled softly. "Then make sure it keeps going. The story doesn't end with me." Later that night, she stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer like stars across the desert. The wind whispered through the silence, carrying the memory of a place once broken, but now healing. On her desk, the smartwatch still rested, its faint glow reflecting off the glass. Those 17 minutes were long gone, yet their echo still pulsed inside her, a reminder that justice is never late, only waiting for courage to awaken it. Outside, a new generation was crossing the bridge. She had built the Guardian Bridge, walking not in fear but in faith, that even through dust and distance, the light ahead would always be real. Dawn spilled soft gold over Highway US 550. The desert wind was warm and dry, whispering through the low brush. A silver SUV stopped by the shoulder, the same place where a single traffic stop had changed everything 1 year ago. The door opened, and Lieutenant Amara Bennett stepped out in full uniform, her nameplate gleaming in the early light. She stood silently gazing at the smooth road where her blood had once mixed with the red dust. There were no traces left, only memory. Another car pulled up behind her. General Ethan Monroe and the new police chief, Dr. Ria Torres, the first Latina to hold the position, approached quietly. Ria broke the silence. "I thought you'd want to see this." She pointed to a new digital sign, glowing blue. "De-escalation saves lives, Guardian Bridge Station 1. Beneath it, a group of trainees packed up their gear, saluting Amara as they passed. "This is the first training site under the Washington protocols," Ria said. "They'll learn here where justice was once lost. Every one of them knows your story." Amara smiled softly. No better place to begin again. Monroe handed her a sealed envelope. "Official appointment from the Pentagon. You've been nominated to chair the National Civil Reform Oversight Committee. If you accept it, means leaving the service." Amara looked at the paper, then said, "I once fought with weapons, then with faith. Maybe now it's time to fight with responsibility." On a nearby hill, small flags fluttered above memorial stones for those lost in the line of duty. Amara bowed her head. The wind carried sand and the faint sound of flapping cloth. "My father used to say dignity is the one thing they can't take. Now I want to believe justice is the same." Later that day in Washington, D.C., The president awarded her the Civil Freedom Medal for her role in reforming the nation's justice system. Applause filled the White House hall. When she stepped to the podium, her voice was calm and firm. "A year ago, I was forced against a car hood. Today I stand here not for glory, but because we turned pain into action. Justice isn't punishment, it's a promise to never repeat the same mistakes." Her gaze swept across the crowd. Lucia Ortega, Sophia, Rangel, Drummond, Eli, and hundreds of officers and citizens. "We can't change the past," she continued, "but we can shape what follows. The Guardian Bridge doesn't belong to me, it belongs to everyone who stood when silence was easier." Outside, the crowd cheered. Drummond approached, holding a certificate. "I wanted you to see this," he said. "I'm now an instructor at Guardian Bridge. I teach about mistakes and redemption. For the first time, I feel right." Amara nodded. "No one is born right, but everyone deserves a new start." A gentle voice spoke behind her. Captain Bennett. A young woman, about 22, handed her a letter. "My father wanted to thank you," she said. Inside was a message written in Cole Whitaker's familiar hand. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I share my story in every class. Maybe that's how I pay back what I owe." By sunset, the ceremony ended. The sky over the Lincoln Memorial glowed red and gold. Sophia approached with a recorder. 1 year from victim to symbol. "If you could say one final thing, what would it be?" Amara looked into the camera, her voice steady. "I'm not ending it, I'm passing it on. Justice isn't a story, it's a torch. Anyone can carry it forward." That night in her hotel, Amara opened her laptop. The headline read, "Justice Department expands Washington protocols to 17 cities." She smiled, closed it, and stepped onto the balcony. The night breeze carried the scent of metal and rain, the city lights stretching like rivers of faith reborn. From her pocket, she took her old smartwatch and pressed the button. The screen glowed faintly. Protocol 9 completed. She whispered, "No longer 17 minutes, now an entire generation." Over the Sandia Mountains, a crescent moon rose, lighting the quiet city. Standing beneath it, Amara was no longer the woman once handcuffed on the highway, but living proof of one truth, that a single act of courage can change an entire system. And if you're hearing this story, take a moment to ask yourself, in your own 17 minutes, what will you do when faced with injustice?